many times, Lord.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Groundbreakers to Harvesters. This is an ongoing conversation about the process of planting a church, at least this section that we're doing. And if you haven't listened to part one yet, I really encourage you to go back, listen to part one, kind of digest what we're talking about. We're not going to review any of that. We're going to pick up right where we're at. And if you skip some of the steps that we talked about and or the thresholds or the, parts of the journey, you're missing some really good stuff. So with that in mind, I want to invite Gerry onto the screen. Gerry, it's good to see you.
It's good seeing you again, and it's great to be here to talk about this fun stuff.
And we're both wearing the same outfits because literally it's 5 minutes after we just recorded part one. So let's get into it. Part two, without further ado, and the planting process. Once you've listened to the culture and you've learned this questioning passion to just ask questions of people to try to understand where they're at and what they're coming from. Then we move on to the next one. That's now development of culture and mission and vision and values and names and timelines and member roles and discipleship process and Sunday school and worship, all of those other things that can really occupy your time. A lot of times you want to do that first and you miss some of the really important things early on, and that's the listening part. So don't do this if you haven't spent and your team hasn't spent some time listening to the community, because otherwise you can develop a mission and a vision and try to set culture that's completely opposite of what you need because you didn't listen to the people that you're actually trying to plant into. So Gerry, why don't you share a little bit, some thoughts and ideas on this?
Well, I would just caution a little bit in that going as far down as developing Sunday school and those types of things at this point. But it's absolutely critical up front that you really understand what God is calling you to do, your mission, what your vision is, what are things that are important to you, and then a name is critical. You know that. I mean, you've just gone through that process in some of your things, and then that should reflect, right, what your mission is, your vision, your values, and then lay out that timeline. And that's so often, I think, what is it? Ready, fire, aim. We do that instead of ready, aim, fire.
Or I fire and then
thing.
Aim, and then I'm like, oh wait, I wasn't ready. So anyways, keep going.
Right. Yeah. Whatever. It's just the wrong order. Right.
Right.
And I think that's so easy to fall into because you get excited about what you're seeing God doing, you're all of those things. And also I think that the piece that maybe we didn't even talk about last time, that community listening, the other part of it is listening, of course, and the most important is listening to God in this is who is he bringing into the team? Who has he brought into this whole process? And that then all of a sudden also starts helping shape what you believe mission is, what the vision is, what those things are. So that's all part of this too.
That's so true. In fact, it reminds me early on at the latest church plant that we're working on, that it's named The Table, and there's a whole story behind that. And we were sitting around a table and we were having food and enjoying some wine and just kind of talking and getting to know each other. I mean, we were all kind of strangers still at this point. And all of a sudden, I don't even know how he got on it, but one of the guys at the table started sharing the story about how he's adopted. And, and he's okay with it, and his dad missed out on the best of life, and a lot of bravado about this, being adopted. But you could tell that, there's still some struggles there, right? And all of a sudden, one of the guys across the table shares that he has adoption in his life, like he was adopted, and I have adoption in my life where my mom got pregnant when she was 18 and gave my half brother up for adoption before she met my dad, and so I have a half brother out there someplace that I hope to meet one day in heaven, and all of a sudden, all of us had this adoption story, and it was like this light bulb went on in our head. We're like, oh, maybe this is the unique mission calling of our congregation to be impact players in adoption and foster and children care who are feeling, or who don't have that typical background, that typical foundation that so many people have. And it was this fantastic thing that never would have shown up on a whiteboard in a brainstorming session. But because we all shared a similar story, we're like, well, maybe this is what God's weaving into this community to be a unique mission for us to make an impact. So, yeah, absolutely.
And I've run into that too, that not the one we're in right now, but the one prior to this. We really thought we were going to have a pretty large student ministry, and because in the beginning we seemed to have a lot of students coming in, and
right.
And the minute when we got started, and so we built some systems around that, and the minute we got started, the students weren't there anymore, and we go, okay, God, what is this about? And so really we had to really listen and watch and see what God was up to, and ultimately it ended up being like littles, the little children one is what we really ended up reaching and becoming. That was really our ministry. And so consequently then that went into, having a homeschool co-op for little kids there, supporting
cool.
that. And, but in the beginning we thought for certain we were being, led towards students. We built a gaga ball pit and all that type of stuff. Yeah,
my back and knees hate Gaga Ball. My back and knees hate Gaga Ball.
I know. It's fun though. I love getting out there and doing that with them. But anyway, but that's as you start trying new things, as you are moving forward, then that helps define mission, vision, values, because you go out and try things. You say, okay, I think this is where we should be doing. This is something that we might want to try. So we try it, and does it work or doesn't it? And what do you learn out of that? Again, it's that listening thing, and then that helps frame really your mission, vision, and values.
Love it. So lots of stuff again. I haven't even really talked about the things that you typically associate with church, and that's worship and stuff like that. We're just laying foundation stuff, and it's so important. But we're beginning to transition into a little bit more impact, non-foundational type stuff. So the next thing is a communication strategy. This one is probably... if you wait this long for this, yeah, communication. It is the downfall of every organization I know. And it's something you got to wrestle with and got to figure out. And it's this idea of how do you keep all of these different entities well informed of what God is doing in and through your people, whether it be a partner churches or your friends and family of the church plant, or your families that are involved in the church plant, or your prayer team that's signed up to be a part of the church plant, let alone your leadership team. And how do you navigate email when there's 5,000 emails that all of us get, none of us read? And what's your social media strategy? What's your website look like? Why are you going to do what you want to do with your website? All of those kind of things. Developing those strategies and as much as possible putting down kind of your curbs on why you're doing what you're doing and what you want to accomplish. The more you can define that, the better it is, because you only want to have to define that once and then revisit it from time to time rather than continually be in the process of defining it. And so that's kind of where we are right now at the table, is putting together, okay, now that we have the name and we're working on the logo, what's our purpose of the website? What are we trying to do with the website? Okay, we've clarified that. What's social media going to look like for us? Okay, we clarified that. We wrote it down, and now it's kind of like this, I don't want to say covenant, but it is this charter that we're using to define and direct us. And here's the deal. This is why it's important to develop this and have it written down. Because the people that are running it right now, I guarantee in a year from now are not going to be running it. Because God's going to most likely transition them into other areas that they're going to serve in the church plant, because someone more competent is going to come in and understand websites a little bit better and be able to even take it to the next level, or develop email strategies and take it to the next level. And so, always with that vision of how do we transition and bring a volunteer up to speed as quickly as possible into this area is really important. And so those are some of my thoughts on that. Gerry, what are you thinking?
On top of that, I think one of the things that when you go out and do the community listening and you look at the demographics and all of that, I know we're privileged enough to be able to get some really good demographic reports. And part of those demographic reports talk about what the preferred communication methods of the people groups that you may be trying to reach. And I think that's really important too, to really listen to some of the experts that have done studies on this. And if your community that you're trying to reach is one that loves going to movies, just for example, then maybe you ought to look at putting up an ad on before the movies, or if it's a big community of I don't know, just pick whatever, and then focus your communication strategy around who you believe God's really calling you to reach. And it's almost too, there's so many ways to communicate nowadays. You can get so inundated that it's almost like you need to figure out what is the best avenue and then focus and do that really well. And then after that, add more if you need.
Right.
Yeah.
Less is more in this situation, I think, in some ways.
It is. And the challenge is once you set this stuff in place, if you don't keep it up to date and keep it going, it can really be a negative.
Yes.
There's so many people that go and check out a website, and if your last post or your last update was, a month or two ago, that says an awful lot to them about who you are and what you're about, and that can be very negative. And so it's almost like with the resources you have, you got to figure out what you can do well with the resources you have, and then with a plan for future expansion of doing things. And I just have to tell you, one of the challenges we have is if you reach a wide range of people, then there are people who only want a phone call. There are people who will only look at email. There are people who will only look at their texts, or there are people that will only live their life out on Facebook. But there's people that will never look at Facebook in their life. And so it's really a challenge even for a leadership team, because I've found myself, the preferred method at my last place was texting. But there are certain things you've got to send an email to give more information.
Correct.
So I'd find myself sending an email out, and then I would text everybody to say, go check your email. It's just it's a crazy time that we're in. We're kind of in this huge transition time, and all of those things have to factor into your communication strategy. They really do.
And I think, and again, companies spend hundreds of millions of dollars on this, and I guarantee there's someone in your community that knows this probably better than you do on what is currently, because again, 5 years ago, what we thought website and social media was going to be is completely flipped upside down now, and it's only been 5 years. And so finding someone, I'm lucky enough that I have two young women who do communications for two different colleges, and so they've been able to kind of talk about best practices and what they wish they could do, but they can't do because colleges are even slower and more archaic in some ways than churches. And so being able to, and so having those conversations, finding out who in your community is gifted at this or has some ideas on this, and understanding that, again, we live in a very visual culture. And so I hate it, but little things like font selections can make a difference, to big things like colors that you use for your website and your logos and things like that. Things that we're not trained in, we've never talked about, and seminary definitely does not have classes on, but are important. And so find someone in your community that is good at that. And if not, email Gerry at groundbreakerslife.com. He'd be more than happy to help out. I'd be more than happy. If you do have questions about that, give me an email and I'll put you in touch with these two young women who have just, I think, really have a good idea on what the current landscape is when it comes to outward communication. And Gerry talked a lot about inward communication to the team and to the church itself. And so both of those need different strategies, I would say. So moving on to the next one. Going back. Okay, keep going.
No, I just say absolutely, because, and I think the caution that I give everybody is, don't just do it because you can do it. I mean, even live streaming. I mean, if you think
Right.
about live streaming, why are you doing live streaming? If you know, many people would say if you're thinking of that as being an outreach, that you're really going to reach people that you know maybe aren't church goers. That's a really not a, that statistics don't bear that out. So why are you doing live stream? Why are you using Facebook? Why are you using a website? Why? And I think that why that you brought out is so critical to really assess. And that is all based on kind of what your mission, vision, and values are all about, who you're trying to reach. I mean, it all ties back together.
Which is informed by the listening to the community, which is identified by the partner churches that say we need a new congregation in this area to connect with people that we're currently not connecting with. So you're exactly right. Well said. Well said. The next one is this: recruit the launch team members and start formation and development gatherings. Explain that a little bit, Gerry.
So this is a challenging thing for a lot of church planters, I think, and the people that have never church planted before, is this term launch team. The way I try to describe it, and maybe I'd love to hear what you say about it, because you probably have a better way of describing it. The leadership team is the one who's really in the beginning stages, trying to form this, doing the mission, vision, values. The launch team now is the ones that you're bringing on, that second circle, so to speak, that is going to help you implement the mission and the vision and the values from the beginning. Ultimately, then recruiting a third and a fourth and a fifth ring of people, right, to come in. But that launch team is the ones who are going to be committed to helping get this thing off the ground, taking it from kind of a conceptual mission, vision, values to kind of stuff that really happens. And that's what I say. What would you say is a launch team? How would you describe it?
I agree. And the thing about the bell curve, and they're the early adapters. They're not the innovators, the ones that are they're the early adapters that are like, yeah, I see it now. They maybe weren't willing to step out into follow a guy that they've never met before to start a church that doesn't currently exist into a land that is still undefined. But now that all those things have started to take shape, they're like, oh, absolutely. So they are the ones that are willing to put in some sweat equity. They actually are so important because they give this shot of energy and momentum to the leadership team that's been kind of grinding away at this process for a long time and maybe hasn't seen the exponential growth that they had originally dreamed. It's just kind of this methodical kind of step-by-step kind of growth, and all of a sudden you have this influx. And one of the things that we did is we went back actually to our partner churches with another kind of like an update. I preached at each one of the partner churches. I gave them an update where we're at, where we're going to plant, why we're going to plant there. And then I invited them saying, and we need local mission people. And what I mean by that is there's a handful of you guys that are going to be called to this church plant for a very specific 6-month period to be critical mass for us to help get things up and running, to roll in on a Sunday morning, to make sure that setup and tear down and all that different launch stuff is taken care of. And then there's some that'll be called for a long-term local mission, and that's maybe a 2-year commitment where you and the family are like, yeah, we're all in for the next 2 years, and then we'll evaluate where God wants us. And then some of you guys may be called to this for like, this is your church home for your kids, your grandkids, and your great-grandkids. And giving that kind of permission invites people to get involved and really help out on that launch team in some really, I think, powerful ways. What would you say to that, Gerry?
I mean, that's great. I mean, I love the additional part you put in it because it's so critical. They are the ones who, like you said, maybe aren't the ones, the innovators, but they are the early adopters. And it's interesting that the people that come in usually are a little more flexible, a little less rigid about what has to be done or not have to be done, and they seem to have a spirit of learning more, or of listening more too, and so they're so critical. And I love what you said about it gives that boost to the leadership team, because by about this time the leadership team is going, man, can't we just get going? This is hard. And for a launch team members to come in and say, man, all the stuff y'all have done, and this is an amazing thing, and we love this, and we can't wait to make it happen and go. And it's just this energy that comes in, which is really a powerful thing. I think the challenge that the leadership team ends up having, and the church planter, though, is to truly incorporate and to engage them in meaningful ways into this process. What we've found is if they come in, and if they truly get engaged, and if they're truly a part of it, and they're a valuable part of it, not just observers, then it really works well.
Yep.
If the launch team is just mostly just observers and consumer types that come in, then it's really a struggle. That isn't what we're talking about here. We're talking about people who truly want to get their hands in the middle of it and do it. And then again, the challenge that the leadership team has is this is their baby, and they need to also then let it go and really let others help them. And that's a hard move.
Well, and I think it is your first major gut check on the culture that you've established. And what I mean by that is,
it is.
Your leadership team has gotten really close and really intimate, and they are experiencing community in a way that not many adults ever really experience post-college. Right? Because they are in the trenches, they're figuring out, they're having conversations all the time, decisions are being made, and it is intoxicating. And that community can quickly become a clique. And that's a cultural thing that will kill your church. And so now you have this influx of launch families, and to watch that leadership team either embrace them and onboard them quickly into the community, and you'll notice this early on, are you going to have two different communities? You have your leadership team community and then your launch team community. And if they're not integrating, that's where you tap the brakes and you have a come to Jesus conversation with your leadership team and basically say, this is all for naught if we are not going to be able to effectively bring new people into the community to the level that they are comfortable coming to as quickly as possible. And if we have two different communities or two different groups, then we are going to plateau, and it's never going to outgrow this, because one group is always going to want to be a part of that community, and one group, unintentionally, it's not like it's malicious, it's not like it's evil, it's just they will unintentionally never invite them to the table. Does that make sense? Into the conversations or into the community or into the Friday nights, we're going to go get wine, and there's that one family that's always forgotten, or those 10 families, and it can kill you. So this is a great... as a church planter, have your eyes out for how quickly is that leadership team integrating new families into the culture and into that inner kind of, I don't want to say circle, but that inner community sense that you've worked so hard to establish. What are your thoughts on that, Gerry?
Absolutely. And I talk to people about how messy this move is, because you have people coming in with new ideas. You have people coming in who want to do jobs that others have kind of embraced. And I mean, it can get really messy. It's that, man, you take that whole team, which is now maybe hopefully at that performing level or, exceeding that even, down into the storming phase again, where you start wrestling again together. And it's really messy, but it's so critical for church planter to help lead that team through that, and really on the other side of it, it's amazing. It really is. It's a cool transition time, but it's messy.
It is. And as we're talking about this, I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone listening to this, and maybe they haven't done this before, and I'm thinking, how many families are tapping out right now, going, no. I am not doing church planting. There's no way. This is insanity. And I chuckled because I'm like, man, now I do understand why so many people, loving, faithful followers of Jesus who adventure out into church planting, absolutely burn out and are just tapping out because they're like overwhelmed. And it can be overwhelmed. And that's why under some of this that I don't know if we put onto a slide, but I know it's Gerry's heart and it's my heart because we have it with each other and we have it in a few different places, is you wherever you are, find like-minded church planters in a network or join a network or connect with some guys via Zoom, Gerry at groundbreakerslife.com. And just
oh my
don't
goodness.
do this alone because you need to have humor. You need to have laughter. You need to be in a community of families and guys that are celebrating along with you, that are struggling alongside you. Understand that when everything's going right, you still might have this utter deep anxiety and fear, and the spiritual warfare is real, and Jesus is fighting with you and for you and in front of you, but Satan is going to mess things up along the way, and it can be a really hard journey. So, as we're talking about this, recruiting a launch team and a leadership team and all this other stuff, it can be overwhelming. Don't do it alone. Get a brotherhood, get a network, and make sure that you're having honest conversations with some people that encourage you and celebrate alongside of you and cry from time to time as well.
Well said. Well said.
All right. So for the two people that are still listening, and you want to continue even further into the I'm just kidding, church planting process, here's the next one for you: community outreach events based on community listening and mission. So this is one of those things that the best thing I can say is go to them. This is not a place for you to develop something from scratch and try to have people come to you. The posture I would encourage is, if you've done your listening well, your community celebration points. They always are in need of sweat equity or volunteers. Be the church that shows up and serves. And no one will notice the first time. They may not even notice the second time, but if you're doing it the third or the fourth or the fifth time, they will begin to notice and others will begin to notice. And so find ways to partner, find ways to serve. Don't feel like you have to create something from nothing. There's already people that are making it happen. Just say, what is our unique role within this, and how can we make a difference and an impact to make it happen? And so, I've seen a lot of guys, because we're innovators, we want to create things, and so we think we need to create something here. And this was really one that it's better to find something to partner with than to create something out of nothing. Is that fair to say, Gerry?
Yes, it is. I think I like, though, you kind of got to do a little bit of both. I think that, for us, we try to find potential community partners that we can go in and volunteer and really make an impact in an area that they need the help in. But I know that you and many other church planners are a whole lot more creative than me, and y'all have found some really amazing ways to differentiate yourself out in the community and to get yourself known from a branding standpoint that has been pretty amazing. So I would just encourage people too to talk to people like Travis and other church planners that are creative, and they've got some amazing ideas that we're way so far out of anything I would have thought of that it's just really fun to hear and see all the creativeness and how well some of those things have been used to reach people. But you can also do things just as simple as like we did in one of ours here. We just cooked hot dogs out in the park one day and offered free hot dogs and just sat down and talked to people. Yep. And started trying to build relationships. And, it can be as simple as that, or it can be really a full-blown thing that you're out in the community, or it can be service projects where you're actually serving. I mean, there's just so many ways. And again, it's pointing back to what is the culture of the place you're trying to reach, and how can you uniquely, as you're uniquely gifted, how can you uniquely serve that community and impact the community for Christ? Because that's what we want to do, right? We want to impact the community for Christ and share the hope we have. I mean, that's really what we're trying to do, I think.
It's a fantastic little summary there. And with that, we're going to wrap up part 2 with the hopes of part 3 coming soon. Man, I cannot thank you guys enough for checking us out and listening in to the conversation about the church planting process from the eyes of an apostolic church planter. Gerry, I thank you so much for your insights and your ideas and thoughts. And man, I am so blessed to be on this journey with you. And I pray that this is a blessing to you guys as you listen in and follow along. If you have any questions, like I said, Gerry at groundbreakerslife.com is a great place to go. Travis at groundbreakerslife.com is a great place to go. If you sign up on the website, you'll get some weekly updates. Not weekly, who am I kidding? You'll get updates whenever they happen. And you can like us on Facebook. You can like us on YouTube and make sure that you follow all the videos that are posted. This is actually part of a group of podcasts that I'm kind of a part of. We do one called Known Legacy, and that one helps dads and men come alive. And then we do one called Encouragement in the Ordinary, and it's this conversation with Anthony Celia and talking about how to just experience and rest in God in the ordinary moments of our lives. And I've enjoyed all of that stuff. So anyways, God bless you guys on the journey. If you're thinking about it, if you need anything from us, email us, reach out to us, Facebook message us. We'll get back to you. We love what you are doing and what God is doing through you, and we want to do everything we can to encourage you and help if we can. So God bless you all.